Hello, everybody.
Hello, hello. So, thank you so much for joining us. I think quite a few of you are from different parts of the world, so it's a real thrill to join you. And also, this is the first time that I've done something like this. So, we'll see how it goes. If it works, we'll do it again. Um, but as a way of context, I'm Robin Block. I'm the founder of Creative EC, and I'm joined by Andrew Dalton, who I've worked with for many years now. And the context for fan circles in this mastermind session is really an opportunity to engage one on one with our sort of most engaged backers. And to give you a bit more context on how this works, we did a big survey where we sent out a survey to our entire audience, um, which is many, many tens of thousands of people. And we had thousands of responses to that survey, which was really interesting. We learned a lot from it. And so we actually, the people that had filled out the survey and taken the time to do that, we actually emailed them and said, would you like to come to this session? There was only 100 places. And so if you're here, I'm really grateful that you took the time and interest to share the next hour or so with me. And the plan is pretty loose. What my agenda is to sort of give you an overview of the mission at Creative EC, what we're thinking, where our thinking is at the moment. And then many of you submitted really interesting, pertinent questions on that second survey. I'm going to try and get through as many of them as possible. And I picked out the questions that I thought were the most interesting. And there was a lot of doubling up. So many of you asked similar questions. So hopefully, I can cover most of the ground in the time we have. And also, Andrew is going to be monitoring the YouTube chat. So if you've got something amazing, some amazing question that you want to ask, you might get lucky and Andrew might choose you. So thanks ever so much for being here. I'm going to get on with it now. So, what is the purpose of this mastermind session? Well, number one, I want to learn. I want to learn from our audience, and I want to be able to share ideas with our audience. And at the moment, what we do at Creative EC is we'll have an idea for something, we'll write it up in a Google document, and we call that the synopsis, and then we share it with our audience, and we get you guys to feed back on it, and we kind of iterate until we think we've got something that everyone's really going to sort of be part of. And that works really well. We're going to continue to do that. We call that our validation stage. And I think where I'm at the moment is we're sort of 7 years in to this journey, and I want to have a group of people that I can go to and just share ideas and talk about stuff and try and figure out how can we iterate and develop new formats. So the Creative EC, the two sort of main formats we have, I suppose, are the In Search of series, which is In Search of Darkness and In Search of Tomorrow, and will be In Search of Legends, which will be the 80s fantasy one eventually. And then we've got the expanded format, which is Aliens expanded and The Thing expanded. And we want that series to carry on as well. And yeah, that's kind of what we're here to do. And the mission and my mission as someone that's leading the business is really to create work that has meaning. Um, and what do I mean by that? I think that if you're the type of person that invests, in the pre-sales for our projects, it's a healthy investment. It's not a small amount of money to be part of these projects. We want you to feel a sense of belonging. We want you to feel a sense of purpose. There's a lot of storytelling that goes into our work, and ultimately, I think it's about developing um, a dialogue with us. And I think that ultimately it's about creating work with meaning. It's meaningful. One of the things that I've learned through doing this for the last few years is when you see our Blu-rays occasionally come up on eBay. they sell for hundreds of dollars. And I think that is because people that have the Blu-rays, they have their names in it. It's kind of manifestation of their brand. They've been on that journey with us. And I kind of guess that the relationship that you have with our work is very different to a relationship you have with your favorite film or other material that you kind of consume on Netflix or wherever else. I think that the work that we do collectively together is very unique and it has meaning. And I think that as we move forward with our roadmap, as we continue to iterate and test out new ideas, the kind of North Star for me certainly is how can we create meaning for you and for us? And that's what today's really all about. So I've got some notes here that I'm going to run through. The first thing that I want to say is my background. I started off in television, in documentaries, straight out of university. I'm 47 now. And then after a great career in TV, I went into business and ran a media company. And then in my late 30s, I got really disillusioned with having clients and just doing work that I didn't care about. And decided to start working on things that I really cared about. And the first project we did was In Search of the Last Action Heroes back in 2018. And that really changed my life. I was like, wow, suddenly, I'm not the only one with a crazy idea. There are other people out there that kind of dig what we're trying to do. And I remember pressing start on the first Kickstarter we ever did and going for dinner with my family and coming back and we'd raised a whole bunch of money. And I was like, wow, this is insane. And things really kicked off when we started doing In Search of Darkness. So I remember coming up with the idea for In Search of Darkness on July 14th, 2018. And by October 6th, 2019, we were in Hollywood for the premiere. I was on this stage with all these like 80s horror luminaries thinking, what the hell am I doing here? There was a queue around the block in Hollywood. And I was like, this is surreal. But the crazy thing is those kind of things have happened enough times now where I realize it's not an accident. And the team that I'm working with are like a world-class team. And the kind of relationship we have with our audience, the relationship we have with our audience is really special and really unique. And I think this is just the start. So, in the last year, I got to work with two of my heroes. I got to work with John Carpenter, who we're currently working with on The Thing Expanded. I'll talk about that a bit more later. And I got to work with James Cameron, who kindly appeared in Aliens Expanded, which was, amazing. And, really grateful for those experiences. But I think there's a lot more we can do. And that's what this is about today. So I'm going to jump into it. We've got some questions. Andrew, do you want to say anything before we sort of roll in?
Not a lot, but I'm going to keep you going on these questions. I'm going to ask you to keep them to 30 seconds or approximately for an answer, please, Robin. We have a lot of questions to get through, a lot of questions in the chat, and a 10-minute monologue on a question might eat up all our time.
I will cut myself off. I'm going to be quick.
Okay, I'll go like that. Okay, so first question comes from Wayne Anderson. What would you like to see Creator VC become in the next 5 to 10 years?
That's an amazing question. And Wayne, thanks ever so much for asking me that. And there was a few people that have said, what's your vision for the future? And the truth is that I don't have like an absolute crystal clear vision of what I want to do. I think that we've got a roadmap, which I'll go through a bit later on in this call, which will give you a kind of overview of what we're thinking up until 2028. But, where I want to be, right, is I want to be the only. Okay, now what do I mean by that? I want to be the only. I want Creator VC to have a relationship with its audience where it's like nothing else. Like there isn't another Creator VC, there isn't another company doing exactly what we're doing. And I want to have evolved the idea of what a documentary is or how a relationship with great art that's influenced you in the past, what that will be, right? And so essentially, I want to see if I can develop something with you which is unlike anything else. Um, if you look at what we do with our documentaries, they're not just documentaries. The documentary is almost like the result of this journey we go on, from sharing ideas through to all the live streams. Really where I want to get to is where, when we embark on a project, we do it collectively. I really want to lean into collaborating more with our audience, because ultimately, going back to what I said earlier, it's about creating something that's really truly meaningful for you. And it's not just about, well, I'm going to pre-order this and just enjoy this documentary. I mean, you can do that as well, but I think there's a lot more to this. And Johnny, in the comments, you're asking about a 3-year plan. I'll show you that a bit later.
Yeah, we've got the slate as a slide we go through after the questions. So, Robin, do your best not to spoil the slate. You've already
I won't spoil it.
You've already partially spoilt it.
Okay. But essentially, 5 to 10 years, I just want to get better at doing this. I just want to focus and get better at what makes us unique. And that can only happen through dialogue, through things we're doing right now.
Okay. Just to quickly say to James Olson, how about an extensive documentary about Tim Burton's failed Superman Lives movie? There's already an excellent documentary on that I don't think there's much more to be said about. And I think it's actually even free on YouTube now, so have a look for it. It's a great documentary if you've not seen it. Right, on to our next question. This is from... Well, it says Curtis Terry, so it's either Curtis Terry or Terry Curtis, not sure which way you wrote your name around. Is there a possibility that you would do a deep dives on specific horror series like Scream?
So yeah, the short answer is yes, absolutely. And I think that our expanded series has given us a kind of framework to explore single IP. Can I tell the story about expanded? I've only got one Hollywood story. This is it. So this is my moment. So I was on the plane going from the UK to LA for the premiere of In Search of Tomorrow, which is our big 80s sci-fi documentary. And I was thinking, God, we've done this, we've got this retrospective format, it's great, but wouldn't it be fun to almost do the polar opposite and go super nerdy and super detailed into one movie? And I remember drawing in my sketchbook on the plane this idea where you could have a whole movie, like a movie timeline, as if the whole movie was in your edit suite and it was this timeline, but it was in like 3-dimensional space, like Minority Report, and you could like dive into scenes and deconstruct them, and that became Aliens Expanded, and I'm really proud of Aliens Expanded because that was the starting point. And if I look all the way to when it finished, and it won the Rondo Award for Best Documentary, was really our entry point into Hollywood at the kind of elite level. It was executed so well by the team, by Ian Nathan, by Sam Way, the whole production team really leveled up on that project. But it was the first time that I'd really experienced having a very clear vision in my mind and seeing it fully executed on screen. So in the short answer is absolutely. We want to do more, and we want to develop formats where we can actually get more noodly about horror, so we can deconstruct why horror works and what's going on behind the scenes.
Okay, I'm just going to quickly forget to the next question. There's a lot of people throwing ideas in the chat, which are brilliant for potential documentaries, but just say, wait for the slate, because wait for the slate. Okay. Next question. William Ficor Jr. says, what do you think is the most influential horror movie in the last 10 years for the current generation of horror fans to reflect on in the next 15 to 20 years?
Oh, that's a really great question. I'm not even sure I'm qualified to answer it, right? So I will try and answer it from my perspective. But in the last 10 years, 10 to 15 years, right, I'm going to give myself a bit more room. I would say one of the breakout movies I saw that I just thought, wow, this is amazing, was It Follows. And it was really scared me at the time. It Follows really scared me. That was brilliant. And we're going through this amazing period right now in horror where, Scott in the chat is talking about Hereditary and Midsommar. You've got Ari Aster. You've got the Philippou twins in Australia. I don't know if everyone's seen Bring Her Back and Talk to Me, but they were amazing. I went to see Weapons.
Oh, that blew me up. Well, you know, my things like that blew us both away.
Yeah, Weapons was amazing. So we're going through a bit of a renaissance. The movie that I helped fund by the film critic Chris Stuckman, the movie's called Shelby Oaks. That opens in America on the 3rd of October. That's going to be brilliant. I'm really proud of Chris and really grateful that I got to be part of that journey with him. So the way nostalgia works is it works in a 30-year cycle. So really, you don't want to, you want to wait for about 30 years before you cover a period. So the 80s has been done, the 90s we're about to finish up, and then we want to go back to the 70s, and Andrew's going to get cross with me for spoiling things. But yeah, so but It Follows was a movie that was so remarkable. Also need to shout out my friend Jed Shepherd, who wrote a movie called Host, which was released back during the pandemic, which was a masterclass found footage movie. If you haven't seen Host, it's about 60 minutes long. I think it's on Shudder, but it's like such an incredible found footage movie. I kind of sought out Jed after that because he's in the UK. I was like, you and me have to be super friends.
Okay.
We'll carry on with the questions.
Next question comes from Aaron Baldock, which is, how much fun has it been gathering all the creators and actors and producers for these great documentaries?
So fun is a kind of interesting term, right?
I think fun is relative when it comes to this
right?
answer.
It's not fun. It's really hard. It's one of the hardest things you have to do. You're navigating so many gatekeepers, agents, reps. It's a massive part of what we do, and I think we're really good at it. But it's incredibly difficult. The fun part happens when you listen to the interviews, and they're phenomenal. And when you meet people that you've admired for years and years, and they sort of live up to your expectations. I mean, I mentioned it earlier, but meeting James Cameron and sitting in the room where he was being interviewed for Aliens Expanded, and James Cameron was absolutely on fire. That was a real pinch me moment. And that was super fun. And I would say the same with John Carpenter. And in fact, everyone we work with, like everyone who's in our documentaries, I get so much pride in. I feel so grateful that we get a chance to kind of celebrate their work. That's really the ethos that we have. So it is fun, but it's very stressful as well.
Okay, and Todd Howard would like to know, I'd like to hear Robin's horror film origin story. Maybe it's been shared a million times before, but I want to get inside where this delightful obsession comes from.
Okay. In a nutshell, I grew up. I'm like an only child, and I had a single mum. And my mum is really into horror movies, so I was exposed to horror movies from like the age of 5. I remember watching the Thing at the age of 5 on my 10th birthday party. My mum rented out Night of the Living Dead and RoboCop, so that was kind of my level of exposure. And so for me, horror movies, apart from just being fascinating, have always just been this source of nostalgia, and it's like a safe space, if that's the right word. Like it's always my favorite thing now is like going with my mates to the cinema to watch the latest horror movie or kind of revisit old horror. On a Saturday night with a takeaway. Like I love that kind of nostalgia is really important to me. But that's my horror film origin story. It was, growing up every Saturday night, not just with my mum, but also with my friends growing up. We all loved horror movies. And there's something of a the 14 or the 13-year-old boy in me that wants to watch the craziest horror movies, and like I still geek out with it. Like I remember watching Aliens for the first time and like not being able to sleep and closing my eyes and seeing xenomorphs and it being such a visceral experience. So that's my origin story. And in fact, In Search of Darkness came about because I just found myself randomly going online and looking at old VHS covers, and just I didn't realize, but I wanted to revisit that time in my life. And I think this whole journey with Creative EC is partly informed by that feeling. It's about going back and revisiting something you know very well and seeing how we can create sort of more enjoyment out of it.
Okay, let's go on to the next one. This is Glenn Michael Stock would like to know, how do you balance its commitment to exhaustive fan first depth with the need to attract new audiences who might not realise how much they'll enjoy a 4 hour documentary?
Yeah, okay. So probably the best way to answer this is audiences aren't flat, they're radial. So when I try and explain that to people, I kind of use the metaphor of an onion. You cut an onion in half, and you've got all these rings, and you've got the kind of audience on the outside that will watch movies on Netflix and Tubi, and then you get further close to the center where you get like hardcore fans that consume everything and you know are really committed to the subject, like it's part of their identity. And I think that's who we are set up to serve. We are set up to serve um, the audience that's at the center of that onion. A 4 hour documentary is not enough, quite frankly. Why have you kept it so short? And people have commented, oh, your documentaries are way too long. And I'm like, but if that's how you feel, which is fine, that's great, but you're not the target audience. Like, the target audience just wants to go completely in deep. And the truth is, if you're doing a film documentary that's 90 minutes, how are you going to serve anyone? Like, they have to be an indulgence. And I think that is part of what our commitment is. We want, every time we deliver a project with you, we want it to feel like an indulgence. This isn't just something you're going to watch on some channel. This is something that you can really enjoy and get huge value out of.
Okay. And Andrew Gard says, Robin, are you planning ahead for the next 10 years of documentaries? As time goes on, it's getting harder to get the people who are actually there to take part. How are you tackling that challenge?
That's a really good question. Okay. And it is a challenge, and you're right. Okay. So, how are we tackling that challenge? Well, I mean, look, it's not a revelation, but we are going to be doing In Search of Darkness 1970s. We start that next year. And that's a problem we're going to face. A lot of the great creators from the 1970s are no longer with us, cast, producers, directors. There are quite a few people that are still with us, which is good. But I think that a documentary doesn't need to be contingent on having the cast and crew that were there. Obviously, we make all the attempts we can to get as many relevant speakers who are the creators as possible. But actually, I think that a documentary has great value when it helps you understand why you love what you love, but also gives you a new perspective on it. And I think that's part of the enjoyment, is when you see something that you love from a different perspective. So something like the 1970s, apart from kind of finding everyone who's still around and trying to get them into this, we want to get all the Hollywood greats. We want to get all the people that were inspired, who are doing really exciting things now in the world, and to be part of this documentary, to celebrate this era, shine a new light on it. And especially as we're sort of 50 years on from the 1970s, that it's such a rich decade, and it's so cinematic. It's going to be amazing. And would I interview Polanski? Probably not. I think at the moment, I'm reading the temperature of the room.
Yeah.
But certainly we'll be covering the movies that are relevant. Rosemary's Baby's in the 60s. Was it the 70s? I think it's the late 60s.
I
Rosemary's
believe so.
Baby.
Was his Macbeth in the 70s? Because that's basically a horror film.
Yeah, but basically, yeah, like that will create a new challenge. And one of the things that we want to do, the fantasy documentary we're having, and In Search of Tomorrow 90s, we have to fast track those projects because people won't be around. So that's how we're coping with it. But also, I think evolving the format slightly so it can accommodate the fact that we might be talking about a movie that's 50 or 60 years old and people aren't going to be around, but we still want to add value to what we're doing.
Exactly. Okay, now Frankie Lopez says, first of all, thank you so dang much, sir. We have In Search of Darkness, 80s, 90s, and soon to be the 70s. Will we ever get a 60s, 2000s, 2010s, or 2020s, and so on? Basically, a never ending ISOD.
Right. Yes, that's what I'd like. Okay. So
I guess it's down to your kids taking over the mantle at some
yeah,
point.
well,
Rather
I
than...
think I know that David Weiner is less. He's really stoked about the 70s. I think that's In Search of Darkness 70s is going to be incredible. And I think that the after the 70s, that might take a few years. It might be the right time to look at the noughties because enough time will have been elapsed. Um, but we'll just have to wait and see. I think that ultimately it's driven by demand. So we only want to work. We can only really work on projects that demonstrate enough demand. The 80s did, the 90s did, the 70s will. I can't speak on the 60s. There's some amazing work in the 60s, but our audience skews slightly younger. The 70s and 80s is perfect, but the 60s might be a challenge. And also, again, there's hardly anyone left from the 60s now. So we have to look at how that works.
Okay. Paul Raso, or Rasso, forgive me for saying your name wrong. I'd like to know what motivated you to start Creative EC and allow so much participation from the fans.
My motivation was I wanted to work on stuff that was meaningful. That's it. I just wanted to work on stuff that I really cared about, and I just hoped there was enough people out there that cared about the same things that I did, and there was. I also wanted to do something which I could look back in years to come and be like, I'm really proud of that, which I do. And because of how we operate commercially and the crowdfunding element of it, crowdfunding isn't just a way of sort of raising the money to make the project. I think that it's more spiritual, if you want a word. Like I feel that the relationship backers have with our work is really unique, and therefore that uniqueness is really sticky. We get a lot of backers that support every project we do, which we're hugely grateful for. So we want to lean into that, and I think that as we continue to lean into that relationship, it makes our work more and more unique, and that's why I'm like, it's really important. And also, just from a kind of product market fit, we want to create something that I don't care about Netflix, right? I've got zero interest in broadcasting. All I'm caring about are like the 1,000 people or the 10,000 people that have supported this project. All I care about is serving you, and I don't care about anybody else. It's just you, and that means we can be really indulgent and do these like 5-6 hour documentaries because no one else is going to do it for you. We're the only ones that will really do it for you, and that's what I want to develop.
Okay, next question from Mark Shorten. Did you ever anticipate that In Search Of would become such a monumental franchise, spawning so many amazing sequels and offshoots?
Nope, I didn't. I remember there were so many moments during the first In Search of Darkness where I was just like, I'm gonna have to pinch myself. So many moments where I was like, I don't really belong here. Like how, I'm gonna get found out. Like I don't feel worthy. So no, I didn't, and often I still don't. I still don't. I still feel like, gosh, this could just all end tomorrow, and like it's crazy actually. There's so much stuff has happened in the last 7 years, which has been amazing. I just feel really grateful more than anything. So I had no idea.
Unfortunately, I can see a question here from Scott Cole, or a request. Please speak to Vincent Price for horror of the 70s. That might be a challenge.
We could do it for a medium.
Yes. I don't particularly think it would work if we were sat there with a Ouija board and a
Would I
camera doing
include
the
vintage
interview.
interviews? Yeah, we do. We do sometimes use archive material of people, but it's not. But it's all about applying different context to it. So, yeah.
I've just got to quickly just say a bit of trivia for Scott here, because he's a Vincent Price fan. He's referring to Dr. Phibes, the horror film starring Vincent Price. My father's friend owns the Rolls Royce that Vincent Price drove in that film. Vincent Price bought the Rolls Royce he drove in that film after the film, and it's in the possession of my father's friend, and my father has driven it on long distance journeys at car shows before. So, bit of trivia there for that film.
Very cool.
Okay, now Lee Uren. I'm not sure. How do you go about choosing which projects to greenlight?
So this is a really good question, and Sharon is asking as well. How do you see the input of fans and backers evolving? Right. So these are actually two connected questions. So Lee, thanks for your question. We actually really think very deeply about which projects to greenlight, and that it's always down to a validation. So we need to. So the way it works is there's a Goldilocks zone, if you're familiar with that term, where you have enough super fans to make it commercially viable to deliver a project. And so, for example, in the survey, the big survey we've just done, the big fan circles one, we asked our audience for ideas, and there was tons of great ideas that came to us, but a lot of them were so niche that they wouldn't be viable. So they're great ideas, but there isn't a big enough audience for this super niche thing. Like Attack of the Killer Tomatoes, that isn't something that we would look at doing because it's not big. That would be outside the Goldilocks zone.
However, it's something I believe has featured in at least one of the previous
Yeah,
documentaries. So while we maybe aren't covering those films in depth specifically, there might be a segment on them in
there
one
might
of
be
the
a
in search
segment.
ofs.
But Lee, to answer your question, we actually go through a process. So you could boil it down to this really. We start with the audience and work backwards. So we might come up with an idea, but normally it's driven by the audience. So we go, well, look, there's a huge fan base for this. Let's speak to the fan base and work backwards and see if actually there's enough really committed fans that can make this viable commercially. So we've got enough money to make it and pay everybody and deliver at the bar that we've been delivering at. I'll give you an example. So we just had the first pre-sale campaign for Slasher Trash, which is the documentary on like underloved slashers, which is going to be amazing. Now with that, I partnered with the Slasher Trash Facebook community, which I could see that was, it was going nuts. Like every week, it was adding like 10,000 followers. And so to me, that was a real signal of interest and demand. So I went to Gareth, who runs that brilliant Facebook group, and said, "Look, we should collaborate because I love the term slasher trash, and you've got this audience that's really into it." And so that's how that project happened. So, but even then, we did a number of surveys to make sure that there was enough people that were really into it, because ultimately, I think the work that we do, 99% of fans aren't going to spend $80 on a documentary, and I understand that. But we're after the people that are actually like, absolutely, I need to be part of it.
Okay. And on to the next question. Michelle Gold would like to know, I'm curious, what is the process for creating the team that works on each project?
This is a really good question. So right now, the team at Creative EC, there's about 17 of us, are like the best team we've ever had. And most of my team that I've been working with for 7 years. And so what I look for in people is, obviously you've got to be like a high functioning person, with tons of capability. But I always look for intrinsic motivation rather. So intrinsic means like when you come and work on a project at Creative EC, I want it to be something that you just have to do. Like, this is the best job you'll ever have. This is your opportunity to actually articulate your passion to the world. And that's what I look for. So the process of creating a team is finding people that I really like, respect, and I think that demonstrate the commitment to deliver one of these projects, because they're really difficult to do. But it all comes down to intrinsic motivation, because although I lead every project, I have to work with people that can work under their own autonomy. And that means if you work with us, if you collaborate at Creative EC, you, I'm not over your shoulder. You have to run on your own steam, and you have to be really committed to delivering. And so far, so good. We've got quite a few projects in various stages of production. They're all on track. They're all on track because the people running them, the people creating them, are absolutely committed to what they're doing. So yeah, and also, like, it's, just people that you want to have fun with. Like, one thing you guys don't know is that every Wednesday night, because we've got people all around the world, Australia, America, Europe, Wednesday, I never go out on a Wednesday night, because that's where we have all our meetings. So I'll have back-to-back meetings for about 3 or 4 hours. And honestly, they're just fun. It's like hanging out with your mates every weekend. And it's so unlike any other creative project job that I've ever had. But although there's a lot of fun, everyone's completely super committed and serious, and you can't operate this kind of cooperative business if there's any weak links. And I tell you, we've got no weak links in this business. Everyone is like top performer. So very grateful.
Okay, on to the next question. Dr. David Edwards, do you think there is mileage in exploring other genres, romantic comedies, etc.?
Okay, see, Andrew, I said I'd bring props.
You did bring props.
So I've got a couple of props, right? So these are books I'm reading at the moment, right? So I'm exploring. No, what's wrong? Start. I'm exploring an anime project, which I'll talk about a bit more later. And Ian Nathan recommended this book by Nick de Semlin, who is the editor of Empire magazine, and I'll show you that. And it's all about 80s comedies. So I do think there is mileage in romantic comedies and other genres. Absolutely. Our audience right now is very skewed towards sci-fi and horror, which is understandable. But in order to grow, we need to branch out into adjacent genres. So anime is really interesting. I've been having lots of conversations with amazing experts on that. If you're an anime super fan, hit me up, please, because I'm learning about it. And I do think there is an opportunity to do something in like 80s and 90s romantic comedies. Certainly, the nostalgia around that. They've got the new John Candy documentary coming out. We had Bratz last year. So I think the challenge is that we can't do everything. So we have to wait until we have a window where we can really explore it. But I would love to do that.
Okay, so we are starting to need to speed up the pace on the questions a bit, Robin. Okay, but this next one I'll let you give an in-depth answer to. So this is an elephant in the room, which is Matthew Crome. Have you successfully gotten in contact with Rob Bottin for The Thing Expanded? If so, has he seen the back of videos?
Okay, so this is a learning opportunity. We can't get everybody.
It harks back to your question before someone asked.
Yeah, all right. So we have done everything we possibly do to get into contact with Rob Bottin. We've hit up his friends. We've interviewed his friends. The last thing Ian has done is he sent a FedEx letter to where Rob is, with a significant offer and a kind of explainer. We've spoken to John Carpenter about Rob. Like, we've done everything we can, and it's been crickets. And the thing is, at some point you go, and also I want to say Rob's absolutely entitled to not participate and respect his privacy. And in fact, the Thing fans know that he hasn't given an interview in 30 years. And so all we can do is ask. But this is one of the challenges with what we do. We do our best to get as many people as we can, but sometimes it's just out of our control.
Exactly. Okay, next question. Tim Lowe, what are the chances of doing a Blade Runner expanded or even another James Cameron classic, The Abyss expanded?
So probably not The Abyss, because I think that hasn't got the same kind of level of fan base. But Blade Runner is something that's come up a few times. I did have a chat with Ian Nathan about it. Ian's done a book with Ridley Scott. But there is actually a very good, relatively recent documentary on Blade Runner. So for now, I would take that off the table, because one of the things that helps us green light a project is we don't want competition. So although with Aliens Expanded, you had the Aliens documentary, it was like 20, 25 years old or 20 years old. So nothing had happened for ages. And I think with the Blade Runner doc, it's a bit newer. So we wouldn't necessarily want to compete right now.
Okay. Scott Cole would like to know, you've built a model where fans don't just watch, they help create. How do you balance creative control with community input, especially when passionate opinions conflict with your vision?
This is a really smart question, and I'm probably not going to give you that smart an answer, because it's very nuanced. Ultimately, David Weiner, who directs In Search of Tomorrow and In Search of Darkness, I don't get involved. He knows what he's doing. With Ian Nathan, Aliens Expanded was his first documentary, but we spent a lot of time at the beginning kind of mapping out the vision, and I was there to help, and David Weiner was there to help. But doing The Thing Expanded with Ian, he's really in his own lane, and balancing the fans' input is a really interesting question, because the fans, well, not the fans, I'd say our backers, we had thousands of backers respond to our synopsis, which is a really good opportunity for us to be given ideas we hadn't thought of, have constructive criticism about some of the things. We take all of that on board. With The Thing Expanded, we're going to be in October, we're going to be sending out like a 6-hour rough cut to about 200 of our backers, which will get feedback on as well. So we really do listen to our backers. And I think, to the second part of the question about balance, creative control, I think there isn't like a set criteria. We listen, and our mission is to deliver the best that we can for you. And ultimately, you're going to get conflict. You're going to get people that go, "Why didn't you even talk about this?" or "Why didn't you interview this person?" And I think that you can't please everybody. What's the thing? What's the maxim? You can please some of the people some of the time, but not all of the people all of the time. And so, we do our best, and we do our best with wanting you to feel heard, and we certainly really admire and listen to and respect the feedback we get. But ultimately, we make the best choices we can with what we have available. And the very fact that we do that means some people will be like, "Oh, well, I was upset because you didn't do this," and it's unavoidable, especially when you've got tens of thousands of backers for a particular project. You're not gonna you're not going to avoid that, and I think that we accept it. We don't. It's not a surprise to us. That's just the waters that we play in.
Okay, next question. We'll get the speed up a bit. Darren Sands, would you ever consider a limited theatrical run for an upcoming documentary?
We did, for Aliens Expanded, and the whole theatrical thing for documentaries is, personally, I think it's a bit of a con, because the business side of it is really murky, and also you've got to remember that our documentaries are super long, so you can't screen a 6-hour documentary easily because it takes up too many cinema slots. With Aliens Expanded, we did a 100-minute cut, which was on the collector's edition. But we did that because we had some serious conversations about doing a small theatrical release. But in the end, I was like, this doesn't make any sense. All the onus is on us to deliver everything, and we're taking all the risk. I didn't like the deal, and so I pulled out. And so it's something we had considered, but so far it hasn't been a fit. If there was a fit, it would be great. We offer screenings for our work all the time. If a cinema wanted to get in touch and play In Search of Darkness or Aliens Expanded, we let them do it. Like, it's sort of, we love our work being screened, but it just hasn't happened a lot.
Okay, next question. Bridget Bishop, What out of the box ideas have you had or creative VC projects that have not been developed yet?
Okay, I've got to be. I'm gonna look. If we go on a little bit, it's all right. Okay, we
Go
don't
on a
have.
little bit, but save stuff for the slate because it's
Okay,
good.
okay, right. I hope you guys are going to stay. All right.
They are. They're there. They're waiting.
I'm not going to sort of rattle on. Okay, so this is a great question. One of the things I want to do is explore more, um, like deconstruct why great cinema is great cinema. And I think that one of the ideas that I was playing with recently was how could you um, create a documentary which wasn't just a documentary but was the start of something longer, like a continual exploration into horror movies, for example, like deconstructing scenes. And I had this loose idea, which was how to make a horror movie, right? And what I'd want to do is just have all the world's greatest horror creators come in and deconstruct scenes, what worked, and get super technical and super nerdy. And then, start that off with a documentary or even a series, and then it would lead on to almost like an accredited course where, you know, people who are interested in becoming horror filmmakers could almost have this sort of really entertaining but really high level immersion in how things are made. How do you set up tension? How do you all of that kind of stuff? So that would be an idea. We've tried books, and they're good fun, but they're hard as well. And also with books, the shipping costs are insane, so it makes it quite hard, which I'm sensitive to. And also just lots of ideas where um, you know we'd love to make them happen, but because we can only do so much in 1 year, we have to prioritize the projects which are going to be the biggest projects, which ultimately means that the smaller, more interesting projects for us we can't get to. So, yeah.
Okay, next question. Christopher Hastings, what is your favourite horror film of all time?
Oh gosh, I don't have one. It's either The Thing, probably would be it. But I love Larry Cohen, so I would say The Stuff. Is Jaws a horror movie? Jaws is going to be in Search of Darkness
Mm.
1970, so let's count it. Jaws is another perfect movie. There's so many. The Stuff, Larry Cohen is the one that I watch quite a lot. I love it. Um, but I don't really. I mean, there's just so many great movies that I love that I keep revisiting. Um, but yeah, I think if I had to make a decision, I think it would probably be. Oh man, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I think The Stuff, because and Day of the Dead. What am I talking about? I think Day of the Dead is my favorite. I went to see it at the
Right.
cinema last year. They did a re-release. It's the 40th anniversary this year. The terrific lady is saying, "I love Larry Cohen's Q." I went to see Q at the cinema on Thursday last week. Um,
There we go.
yeah,
Okay. Next question is from Dave Friscolanti, who asks, what are the biggest hurdles when making these documentaries besides financial backing?
that's a pretty big hurdle right there. I think the biggest hurdle is access to talent. But honestly, that is the hardest thing because uh, you just never know how it is going to go. With Aliens Expanded, we actually sent our rough cut out to backers before James Cameron, Gail Ann Hurd, Paul Reiser, or Sigourney Weaver was in it, and it came out with great scores. But finally, we managed to land an interview with James Cameron, and that opened everything else up for us. And so I think Sigourney Weaver came in at the last moment, like we had to re-edit the movie
Yeah.
to put her in. So the hardest thing is access to talent. You know,
Yeah.
um,
Okay, next question. Sean Dalton, no relation that I know of. Do you have plans for an Alien Expanded book by Ian Nathan?
do we have plans? Yes, we have plans, but the problem is that we wanted to do something for the 40th anniversary of Aliens, the movie, which is next year. But because of other commitments that we have or want to have with Ian, I don't think we can do it because it's too much work. Books are really, really hard. but I know there's demand. So I like to think that we will get to it, but it's not as soon as I hoped, and I actually had to take it off our plan because I realised we weren't going to have enough time to do it all.
Okay, and the next question is from Erin Fritz. I would be curious to know which projects were the most popular and why, which sold the most, and also which projects are next to be released. Well, the last part of that we're going to cover off. Do the first half of the question, Robin.
Okay, we'll do. How about this? I'll answer the question, then we'll go straight to that. Everyone's been waiting for the roadmap, so we'll jump into
Okay.
that. Okay, but I'll answer this question. The most popular, I think. So, In Search of Darkness is probably like one of the most successful independent documentary series in the world at this point. And I want it to carry on forever. In Search of Tomorrow, the sci-fi one, had about, I can't remember exactly, but that was hugely successful. And I think at the time it was the most successful independent documentary that had ever been crowdfunded. But Aliens Expanded was a huge hit for us. So that had about 18,000 backers. So those three have been huge for us. And yeah, so those are the most popular. And why? I think it's because we got our job right. I think we sold it in the right way. I think that the audience really enjoyed it because it's indulgent, because it's meant for a very specific elite kind of group of superfans. And the next project to be released, well, I can actually say that. So the next project that's going to be released is In Search of Darkness 95 to 99. That
Yep.
comes out in December. That's going to be amazing. Then we've got The Thing Expanded, which comes out at the end of Q1 next year. And I can tell you about The Thing Expanded. I'm watching all the rough cuts at the moment, and it's absolutely fantastic. Like, as someone that loves The Thing, I'm just like, I've been going back to the team going, I've got no notes. I just love it.
Okay. So should we do the slate then?
Yeah,
Here we go.
I'll walk you through it.
Let me hide that. And here we go.
Okay, great. So this is kind of where we are at the moment. So In Search of Darkness 95 to 99 and the In Search of Darkness 90s Collector's Edition, which is the two set with 90 to 94, that's going to be the digital version will come out in December this year, but the actual manufacturing and all of that kind of stuff happens in January or December, January. So it will be shipping in January. So that comes out Q1. Then The Thing Expanded April, May for that actual release. So that's I'm going to say Q2. It'll probably be right at the start of Q2 next year. And then in Q3, we do the pre-sale for In Search of Darkness 1970s, which is going to be wild, and we're going to have the most fun. I actually think that the whole team are watching lots of 1970s movies at the moment. Like, we're having a blast, and we're really getting into the kind of depth and the real cinema. And there's so much to explore. I don't even know how we're going to explore it. Like, this could be a multi-doc series if we get it right, if you guys want it. And then Terminator Expanded. So Terminator Expanded, we're looking at kind of August 2026 next year. What's missing from this is I've got a window. I think it might be in May, not May. It might be in June or September, where I want to launch an anime project. And the kind of working title we have is Icons of Anime. It's a kind of In Search of Darkness style kind of retrospective, and it's looking at the years, I think, 1983 to 1997. So I'm literally in conversations with lots of anime experts at the moment about developing that. So we've got a window for that, but I didn't put it on here because it's still quite embryonic. And then going into 2027 and 2028, we are going to develop In Search of Legends. And this is really interesting because the only reason we brought In Search of Legends back into play is because it was the highest scoring, most requested project that we listed in our last survey. And although and I'll give you some information about it, um, the most sort of very interested, that we had a category going, how interested are you in this project? And like very interested, the most amount of very interested was In Search of Darkness 90s, 70s, which we kind of knew. We knew there was demand for that because people have been asking about that for ages. But In Search of Legends actually overall got a higher score than anything else. Andrew was very happy.
I was. It was a project myself and I think Paul, who does motion graphics, have been pushing for a number of years.
Yeah, so we were doing that, and we're going to be doing In Search of Tomorrow 1990s, which is the next one from the 80s. So that's the plan. I'm in talks with David Weiner to run a couple of those projects concurrently, but we're only doing it and we're only taking it very seriously in terms of our windows and our planning because you asked for it. That's the truth.
Okay. Let's go back to the questions. Or should we finish off these questions quickly and then take a few from the audience?
There was
Maybe
one.
about this?
My pal Dan Eilert was in this, and he asked a question about products a little bit earlier.
Mm-hmm.
And if we get a chance, I'd like to answer that. Yeah, Kazra Justin is on my kind of hit list. A lot of people have recommended him. I don't have a mailing list for anime. I will do at some point once I'm further down
Okay.
the road.
Well, we've got about 4 questions left. Let's get through these and then we can take some about the slate of everybody. So, Giovanni Del Dio says, what happened to the Italian horror documentary?
Okay, so I was developing a project called, which was an Italian horror documentary, and we called it Nightmare Industry. And we validated it. We had got to the point where we recognized there was significant demand. And probably the best way of putting it is there was creative differences between myself and the team I was working with on that project. And I decided that I wasn't comfortable moving forward with it. And I think that also at the time there was a massive economic downturn. The conflict in Ukraine had happened, and I wasn't feeling hugely secure about our position with a new project and new team. And so ultimately, every time we come to you and say, look, we've got this idea, will you support it? The whole team feels an enormous sense of responsibility. And the buck kind of stops with me. So I'm only ever going to develop a project where I'm really confident, number one, we can deliver. And number two, I've got to have full confidence in my team. And I didn't in that scenario, so I stopped it. So that's what happened. But I did have a very good conversation about it this week because it came up in the survey. So I think that in terms of our horror roadmap over the next few years, unless someone comes in and does like the definitive Italian horror documentary, it's absolutely something that we would love to do.
Okay, next question from Gabriel. I'm not sure. Forgive me if I got it wrong. Wiggins, who was your favourite person that you've ever got to meet / interview? What was your Mount Everest of actors or actresses or someone you said they'll never agree to us and then they did? Well, I think we all know the answer to that.
Yeah, for me, it was James Cameron. And, I'm a massive, he's a generational great creative. He's probably one of the most successful creatives in history. And I was so nervous being in his studio. They say never meet your heroes, but he didn't disappoint. He was everything and more than I ever expected. He was so gracious to give us that time, what I love about the James Cameron story is that he came from nowhere. He wasn't he didn't have connections in the business. He's so determined. He's got such a clear vision that you can't, as a creative myself, you can't just not be impressed by the man and his energy and his vigor. Even now he's got his hands full with Avatar. He's doing his next movie. It showed me what's possible if you fully devote everything to your art. And it was just a magical experience, and it was a real high point in my career. And he was phenomenal in Aliens Expanded, and I think he loved it. The feedback we had, Gale Ann Hurd, who is like got her own Hollywood Walk of Fame um, award, kind of promoting the documentary, going out to her fan base, going, "This is really good." Like that whole experience was wild. Like I never dreamt we'd reach those heights.
Okay, and the next question comes from Shane Ellis. How has the creation of Creative EC, sorry, how has the formation of Creative EC changed the way you have thought about the delivery of documentaries to fans?
It's changed massively. We've got much better. We've got full-time customer service. We've got much better processes to deal with fulfillment and manufacturing. And I think that we're going through this period of really listening now and wanting to be critiqued, wanting to improve. And so I think of it now, like originally it was just like, just make the documentary. Now, 7 years on, it's like, how can we create this holistic, omni experience for fans? How can we make our live streams better? How can we create more meaning in what we're doing for you? And that's what we're doing.
Okay, I just quickly want to pivot to a question from the YouTube chat here from Karen S. 'Cause I think this probably needs even closing down by yourself. Creative EC streaming app.
We tried it. I don't think there's enough demand. We did something called insearchofdarkness.com. No, it's called Darkness Unlimited, which was a kind of test for that kind of model. And the truth is, what our fans want is this is the collector's In Search of Darkness 1980s pack, and I think only about 2,000 of these were made. And if you can find one on eBay, they're hundreds and hundreds of dollars. I've seen them go for $300 or $400. Like, our backers want to touch something, want to collect it. There's probably 30 or 40,000 names in the credits across these 3 documentaries. Like, that's meaningful. I think the problem with streaming is suddenly we're competing with everybody else, and that's not what we want to do. We want to create something that's a tactile experience that you can hold and touch. So yeah, we can't do everything, so we need to focus on something that makes us different. And I think having something you can touch and hold and be part of, from the artwork, you can see the posters behind me, like all of that goes into the thinking. I'm not looking to scale up what I'm doing. I'm looking to narrow down and get, I want to be at the point where our audience loves what we do, right? And there's no one else that can do what we do, because we're in our, we're not the best. We don't need to be the best, but we're the only doing this holistic experience.
So there we go. The last question of the night from the pre-selected questions comes from Jason Lennox. Would you consider doing anime expanded projects on films like Akira, Ghost in the Shell, etc.? Would that be something you'd consider?
Absolutely. And I think that, and I go into this whole anime medium with great humility. I knew so much about movies as a movie fan. I literally know nothing about anime, and I'm having to educate myself. I'm reading books and watching some of the classics. And but the reason I'm doing it is because I see huge parallels. The kind of films that I'm looking at covering in Icons of Anime are so layered. They've got so much contextual, so much depth, there's so much to talk about and explore, and they've had so much influence that it lights me up when I think about it. So if we are able to execute and deliver and are successful with Icons of Anime, it does set up a roadmap to start doing, Akira Expanded, to do more in-depth retrospectives on single IPs. So that's really exciting.
There we go. That's the last of the pre-selected questions. Let's see if we've got anything in the YouTube.
How has everyone found this, by the way? Because I was very nervous coming into this. Really delighted that you've all kind of joined in with really great questions. But I hope you're enjoying it, and I really want to hear your ideas. And I think we'll do fan circles again. Excuse me.
Okay. Well, they absolutely love this. They think it's amazing. And we've got a lot of, just love for this whole thing.
My friend Dan asked a question earlier, and it was about products. And I think that, I don't know if he's still around. If he asks it again, I'll answer it.
Okay.
But it was a good one about, are you considering other products and merchandise and that kind of stuff?
Yeah. There's a question that's been going from a few people, particularly from Loch Ness VHS has been asking. Well, I'll summarise the question. Basically, a documentary about TV horror.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of this is the thing, right? So TV horror is uh, like this wide open space. It's almost too nebulous. And but what I would say is, I think in the future, I'd love to be able to kind of encapsulate TV into its own project, but it has to be very, very specific. And I'm trying to think. I've got the book behind me. Well, I had the book behind me. I forget the name now, but there's a podcast in the UK, um, which covers like all the UK scary TV from the 70s and 80s and 90s. It's fabulous, and I've always been really intrigued. Um, yeah, so I think there's an audience for it, but the problem is that that's the kind of niche project which like I would watch, but the challenge is that there's other projects that we could do which are bigger, which have a more committed audience, and we need to prioritize them.
There we go. Let's see what else we got now then. Oh, goodness me. Asking for what series about anthology shows. We've got Scooby Doo to Twilight Zone.
Yeah, I mean, it's sort of it's this is one of the things that came through the survey was all of these kind of ideas, and I think the challenge is that I don't think there's. I mean, Buffy has a big enough fan base, but
Yeah,
it's almost not problematic, but you know you'd have to get the cast together. That would be very expensive, and it's instinctively I'm like, are we? Is that is there enough depth? And I don't mean this. And I know people love Buffy and it's iconic, but is there enough complexity in the narratives to get really noodly? I'm not familiar with it. I didn't really watch it, but I think that the access could be very difficult for that project, and so I think there's more risk. Stephen King expanded. Ian Nathan wrote a fantastic book. Ian Nathan's the director of Aliens Expanded and The Thing Expanded. He wrote a brilliant book on Stephen King adaptations. He wants to do a Stephen King documentary, but the problem is another Stephen King documentary came out a couple of years ago, and the guys that made it actually reached out to me back in 2021. Now I haven't watched it, and I think it didn't really land. But because there's another documentary out there about that same um, subject, that just rules it out at the moment. James Olsen is asking about The Shining. I would love. That's probably one of my favorites as well. The Shining. I would love to do something on that, and I think that's where it wouldn't be about getting cast members. It would be about really exploring the film, not just from an academic perspective, but you'd want to balance that with an entertaining perspective as well. So that's the kind of formats that I'm really interested in discussing with this group, which is how could you get the right balance of that. But absolutely, and that if I ever did a project like that, I would actually go to the Cubic Foundation and say, listen, we should collaborate. So maybe something. And there is Room 237. You're right, Matthew, and I love that. I have it on Blu-ray, which is an amazing film. But it's almost not to do. It's almost nothing to do with The Shining. It's almost about fandom, the way it kind of changes things. Yeah.
yeah. But there we go. I think it's probably time to call it there, Robin. You've done an amazing marathon. You must be tired now.
You know what, right? I'm really grateful. I could do this for hours, but I just wanted to say, yeah. I mean, comics as well. I mean, it's just when you look at documentaries about comics, they don't do great on Kickstarter. It's sort of again, you can't just pick something and do a doc like that. Thinking, pick this and we'll do a documentary on it isn't the right way to think about it. You actually have to start with the audience, and the audience isn't just the audience. It needs to be that center of the onion. You've got to find that there's enough super hardcore, super fans, and enough of them to really make it work. But I'm on Twitter or X, whatever you call it, at Robin Block. Give me a follow. Feel free to ask me any questions. I'm so grateful that you turned up. I'm going to leave this up on YouTube for a bit. But yeah, just thank you so much, and I will learn from this. We'll do this again, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if we didn't get to your question, sorry about that. But thank you so much for contributing.
Bye bye, everyone.